Well, who else?
Well, that's it.
At 91, after nearly 7 decades living under Hollywood's spotlight, Shirley Jones, the singing angel who once captivated all of America, finally broke her silence with a confession that stunned the film industry about Burt Lancaster. In what seemed like an ordinary interview when asked, "Which man do you remember the most?" Shirley simply smiled, stayed silent for a long time, then said 3 words: Burt Lancaster. Those 3 seemingly simple words opened a door to a past filled with emotions never before told, admiration, fear, and a truth she had hidden for more than half a century. Behind those glances on screen long ago, did there exist a relationship that went beyond acting? Why did it take Shirley Jones nearly a century to find the courage to speak the truth about that man? Let's find out. Shirley Jones was born in 1934 in Charleroi, a small, peaceful town in Pennsylvania, where the afternoons were filled with the sound of church bells and the smell of toasted bread drifting through the streets. In that little world, young Shirley carried within her an extraordinary gift, a voice as pure as spring water. From an early age, she sang in the church choir. People would stop by the door just to listen to the blonde-haired girl singing Amazing Grace with a tone so clear it seemed to make time stop. Her gentle parents soon realized that this voice was not ordinary. They spent all their savings to send her to study vocal music, believing that this voice was meant for the stage. At 18, during a trip to New York, Shirley happened to attend an audition for a musical. She hadn't planned it, hadn't prepared, she just sang with all the sincerity of youth. That very day, 2 of Broadway's most powerful figures, Rodgers and Hammerstein, were in the theater. When she finished singing, the room fell silent. Rodgers turned to Hammerstein and whispered, "This girl doesn't just sing, she changes the room." That same day, they signed her to a personal contract, something that had never happened before in Broadway history. The small-town girl from Pennsylvania suddenly stepped into the world of bright lights, cameras, and glittering dreams. From a place where everyone knew each other by name, Shirley now stood in glamorous New York, where people didn't call you by name, they called you by fame. The press wrote a crystal-clear voice, a face that makes America look up and listen. It was the beginning of a glorious journey, and also the moment destiny began quietly arranging itself. For the light shining on, Shirley would not only illuminate her talent, but also the hidden corners she didn't yet know existed within herself. Just a few years later, the name Shirley Jones was known across America. She appeared on the cover of Life, was invited to sing in major shows, and stood alongside legendary names. But few knew that behind those dazzling lights were people who quietly guided her, those who believed in her before Hollywood ever did. Rodgers and Hammerstein weren't just her discoverers, they became her artistic fathers, leading her every step of the way. They taught her how to breathe, how to feel the rhythm of lyrics, and most importantly, how to keep her soul intact in a world where everything could be traded. When the studio suggested casting a more famous face for Oklahoma, Rodgers slammed his hand on the table and declared, "No, it's her or no one." That sentence changed Shirley's destiny. Oklahoma premiered in 1955 and became a nationwide sensation. The image of the farm girl with smiling eyes and a sweet voice captured the hearts of audiences. She didn't just sing, she seemed to tell her own story, pure, sincere, uncalculated. Soon after, director Henry King cast her in Carousel 1956, followed by April Love 1957, and then The Music Man 1962, where she transformed into Marian the Librarian, gentle, intelligent, and dignified. The film became an icon of American musical cinema, and Shirley became the woman America wants to bring home to meet their mother. The press called her Hollywood's purest star, the one who made audiences believe the world still had room for kindness and innocent love. But light that burns too brightly can also blind. The more famous she became, the more trapped she felt. Directors saw only her gentleness, her purity. They wanted America's sweetheart to stay that way forever, to never change the smile, the voice, the image. In one old interview, she said, "People love me for my pure image, but sometimes I wonder, do they love the real me?" No one had the answer. But then fate sent someone, new director Richard Brooks, known for his gritty films and fearless vision. He saw in Shirley what Hollywood could not, the potential of a real actress, not just a star. Brooks insisted on casting her as Lulu Baines in Elmer Gantry, defying the studio's objections. "I want the audience to see the woman behind that smile," he said. And so Shirley, the very symbol of innocence, stood at the threshold of becoming a fallen, bitter, and complex woman. The headlines screamed, "Shirley Jones destroys her own image." But Rogers, who had guided her for years, simply smiled and said, "Sometimes to keep your soul intact, you have to dare to do the thing others doubt." No one expected Elmer Gantry to become her destiny's turning point. It not only earned Shirley Jones her first Oscar, it also brought her face to face with the man who would unsettle her life forever, Burt Lancaster. And everything began as destiny so often does, in silence, in doubt, and within a script no one believed that sweet girl could ever play. In 1960, when Shirley Jones was at the height of her fame, she received a script that shocked all of Hollywood, Elmer Gantry. A film without songs, without glittering scenes, filled instead with the torment of guilt, faith, and human desire. The role offered to her, Lulu Baines, was that of a woman once innocent, then betrayed and pushed to the depths of humiliation. It was a role completely opposite from the Angel of America image that audiences adored. But Shirley accepted without hesitation. She said, "I've sung about love long enough. Now I want to know how much it can hurt." Her co-star was Burt Lancaster, a name that carried the weight of an entire generation. He wasn't just a leading man. He was the embodiment of masculine power and complexity. Everyone who worked with him said, "When Burt walks into a room, the air changes." He stood tall, as if the world itself had to lean slightly to make space for him. Shirley never forgot the first time they met on set. He didn't speak, he only looked at her. A glance that lasted a few seconds, enough to make her skin prickle. Later she recalled, "I felt like he could see right through me. Not as a co-star, but as if he knew me better than I knew myself." On the first day of filming, the entire crew held its breath. In the opening scene, Burt played Reverend Gantry, a charismatic preacher, ambitious and manipulative. Shirley, as Lulu, stood across from him, a woman scarred by faith, love, and betrayal. When the cameras rolled, no one could tell where the acting ended and the truth began. Burt approached, his voice low and sharp as a knife, while Shirley trembled, her eyes wet not from the script, but from something rising within her. When the director finally shouted, "Cut the set," fell silent. No one spoke. The cameraman simply exhaled and whispered, "I've never seen a scene so real." Shirley sat still for minutes, trying to catch her breath. "He acted like he wanted to strip your soul bare," she later said. "I was terrified, but I couldn't look away." When Elmer Gantry premiered, it became a phenomenon. Burt Lancaster won the Oscar for Best Actor, and Shirley, the girl who once only sang about love, won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. But on the night she received the Golden Statue, as she stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause, she didn't smile. Tears fell, and in that magnificent hall she whispered, "I don't know if I'm happy or afraid of what just happened." After that film, Burt and Shirley rarely met again. They weren't close, never corresponded, and were never caught in gossip columns. But his eyes that first gaze on set followed her all her life. Years later, in a small interview, a reporter asked, "Did you ever love Burt Lancaster?" Shirley smiled, shook her head gently, and said something that left the room silent. "I didn't love him, but if there was ever someone who made me doubt that, it was Burt Lancaster." And from that day on, whenever people mentioned Elmer Gantry, they didn't just talk about the film, they spoke of something unseen and invisible current between two people who never touched yet made the world stop and watch. After that role, Shirley Jones became the name every studio wanted. The press called her the star who could both sing and ache. But beneath the glossy magazine covers lay an unnameable emptiness, for when you've touched something truly real, everything else starts to fade like the lights dimming after the curtain falls. It was then that Jack Cassidy entered her life, handsome, charming, confident, and clever enough to read your thoughts with half a smile. They met on stage and soon married on August 5th, 1956. At the time, everything about them shone brightly. Two artists, two packed schedules, two rising careers. Then came their three sons, each a different note in the melody of their life together. Shaun Cassidy, born 1958, bright-eyed, bursting with energy and destined for stardom. Patrick Cassidy, born 1962, calm and deeply emotional, born for complex dramatic roles. And Ryan Cassidy, born 1966, the quiet, observant youngest child. From the beginning, Shirley also became stepmother to David Cassidy, born 1950, Jack's son from his previous marriage to Evelyn Ward, a bond that would later shape a special chapter in her life. On Hollywood's red carpets, they were the golden couple. But in the nights without applause, their home slowly cracked under questions no one could answer. Jack craved attention like air, and the more the spotlight favored Shirley, the more restless he became. At first, it was just a frown, then teasing remarks, then real arguments. "He wanted me to belong to him, only him," Shirley later said. "But I knew I belonged to the stage and to music in a way I couldn't deny." They kept working, appearing together, smiling beautifully for cameras like every perfect Hollywood couple did. But some nights, Jack would leave a party halfway through and Shirley would stand alone among polite congratulations. She would smile, shake hands, go home, lock the door, and sit in silence. The silence of a woman who knew she was losing something far more precious than fame. By 1970, as the fractures in their marriage deepened, ABC offered Shirley the role of a widowed mother in The Partridge Family, a small TV show that became a cultural phenomenon, 1970-1974. She played Shirley Partridge, the warm, patient mother driving a multicolored bus with her 5 children singing across America. On screen, she was gentle and radiant. Off-screen, she was juggling filming motherhood and exhaustion that no one saw. David Cassidy, Jack's son, was cast as Keith Partridge and soon became a global teen idol with "I Think I Love You," a song. America couldn't stop humming. Ironically, while the world called her America's mom each night in the mirror, Shirley saw a woman who could no longer tell where her character's smile ended and her own began. The success of the Partridge Family was like a fresh coat of paint over old cracks. Underneath, the marriage kept wearing away season after season. In 1975, Shirley and Jack divorced. On December 11, 1976, Jack died in an apartment fire caused by a lit cigarette. A sudden, cruel ending for a man who lived every day as if it were opening night. Shirley came to identify his body. She stood for a long time before the zipped bag and whispered so softly it was barely sound. "He never really knew who I was. for years after she avoided all questions about love. When pressed, she only smiled and said, "I've loved and lost enough for one lifetime." But some things refused to stay buried. Whenever the Partridge Family re-aired, the smile of Shirley Partridge still warmed America's hearts. But the real woman walked quietly through silent rooms, her footsteps careful, as if afraid to wake an old memory. And in the deepest part of that silence, one name remained: Burt Lancaster, not a face anymore, just an echo of that long-ago gaze. After many years of silence, Shirley withdrew almost entirely from Hollywood. She appeared only at small events, offering a polite smile, and then disappeared once again from the camera's frame. Many people said, maybe she's grown tired of the spotlight. But in truth, Shirley was only tired of herself, tired of memories that refused to rest. And then, as if fate were playing a trick, she met Marty Ingalls, a loud, eccentric comedian who was the complete opposite of every man who had ever walked through her life. Marty wasn't Hollywood handsome, wasn't glamorous, and didn't speak with the suave charm of Jack Cassidy. He entered her life with clumsy jokes, silly gestures, and a laugh that spread like that of a child. At first, Shirley found him annoying. Later, she recalled, "I tried to stay away from him, but then I realized he made me laugh, something I'd forgotten how to do for years." Marty often joked I didn't come to win her heart. I came to fix the broken laughter switch. And strangely, somehow, he did. Shirley began to laugh more, talk more, live more honestly. In 1977, they married in a small, simple wedding so modest that no one could believe the star Shirley Jones would choose a ceremony with no white dress, no cameras, no noise. That marriage from the outside looked like a long-running comedy lasting nearly 4 decades. They argued like children, broke up, and always came back. In 2002, Shirley even filed for divorce, but withdrew it a few months later. She said, "I realized I couldn't bear it when the house was too quiet." Marty simply laughed. "I knew she had a wound. I never tried to erase it. I just stayed to make it hurt less." Together, they wrote the memoir, Shirley and Marty, An Unlikely Love Story, sharing their endless little quarrels and the way they always made peace with a joke. "He made me feel alive," she said. And perhaps that's why their love, though messy, lasted nearly 40 years. On October 21st, 2015, Marty passed away from a stroke. Shirley was silent when she heard the news. At the funeral, she didn't cry. She simply held his photo tightly and whispered, "There isn't a day I don't miss him." After the ceremony, when asked how she felt, she gave a faint, sad smile. "He made me laugh until the very end, and that was the greatest gift of my life." But even after having 2 husbands, one who made her shine and one who helped her find her laughter again, there was still a name she never dared to say. A name that had lain quiet for more than half a century, surfacing only in dreams, carrying an old warmth and fire in its gaze. Years after Marty's death, Shirley Jones lived quietly in her small Los Angeles home. She rarely appeared in public, occasionally granting short interviews where she spoke about music, the past, and the joy of still waking up each morning. Everyone thought she had closed the door on yesterday until one autumn afternoon during a film tribute event, the host asked her a seemingly harmless question. "Of all the men you've ever met, who do you remember the most?" Shirley smiled gently, a soft, slightly shy smile, and then fell silent. The room waited. The camera caught her hands clasping tightly on her lap, and for a few seconds the air itself seemed to stop moving. Finally, she spoke slowly, just 3 words. "Burt Lancaster." No one said a word. Some in the audience looked up thinking they'd misheard. But Shirley wasn't joking. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling as she continued. "He made me understand what fear is, and what truth is. Burt was never gentle, but he saw me as a person, not as a performance." The host leaned toward the microphone, ready to ask more, but Shirley stopped him with a quiet shake of her head. She looked off into the distance, her eyes glistening. "I've never said this before, but perhaps he's the only man I could never forget." In that moment, the once bustling room fell silent like a chapel. No one dared to breathe. The camera zoomed in slowly on her time-worn face, where a smile and tears met like two sides of the same memory. The next day, the media exploded. Shirley Jones's final confession became a headline across dozens of newspapers. Some claimed she was hinting at a secret affair. Others said it was simply admiration between two great artists. But those who truly understood cinema knew this was how a real artist speaks of love without naming it, yet making everyone believe it existed. Many revisited scenes from Elmer Gantry, the ones where Burt and Shirley looked at each other too long, too real, as if even the cameras couldn't separate the truth from the performance. Decades later, those glances still gave viewers chills. Perhaps because in that moment, Burt truly saw Shirley, and Shirley for the first time was seen without having to act. When asked again in a later interview, she only smiled softly. "No one ever made me feel fear and admiration at the same time, except Burt Lancaster. And perhaps that is love in the way only those who have lived through everything can understand. No need to hold hands, no need for promises, just one look, enough to last a lifetime." Now at 91, Shirley Jones lives slowly in a house with windows facing an orange grove. In the afternoons, she sits by the window, sunlight falling gently on her wrinkled hands, soft and golden like an old film reel. On the table are a few photographs, one with Jack Cassidy, one with Marty Ingalls, and between them a behind-the-scenes picture from Elmer Gantry. Burt Lancaster bent over a script. The photo has faded, its edges curled, but Shirley still keeps it like a treasure. She whispers almost inaudibly, "All my life I lived through songs and smiles." But the truth only needed to be said once. Now when people speak of Shirley Jones, they no longer remember only the Oscar-winning star or the loving mother from the Partridge Family. They remember the woman brave enough to tell the truth even when no one asked for it anymore. And perhaps in the final years of her life, truth is no longer a burden but a kind of peace. Because sometimes it takes a lifetime to finally find the courage to name your own feelings. What do you think about the truth that Shirley Jones finally admitted at the age of 91? Was it a confession of a secret love, or simply the way a woman who has walked through a lifetime of glory chooses to lighten her heart before the curtain falls? Whatever it was, her words left all of Hollywood in silence, and perhaps made us ask ourselves, if it were you, would you have the courage to speak the truth you've hidden all your life? Share your thoughts below in the comments. If you enjoy stories from behind Hollywood's bright lights, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next secrets we're about to reveal. Thank you for watching until the end. See you in the next episode, where another legend story will unfold, and another truth may make you question everything you once believed.